white people are losing it. Clever blacks are losing it. They hate the NHI. You know why they hate the NHI? They are the ones who, when you talk about foreign nationals, they've been telling you, don't worry, it's Pan-Africanism, it's what. Now, they are going to be forced to share the same resources with rank and file members of society. Rank and file, I'm talking about us, I'm talking about our poor Africans, migrants who come to South Africa without much in their hands. And whenever they have medical impediments, they have to come and seek medical attention. You've let the borders open, so if they come, they need to get medical attention. It's a human rights violation not to afford the medical attention. Those rich, clever blacks who have always said, hey, we must be allowed to share and stuff, now they are losing it. They are losing it because now they are starting to feel the same thing those people in Atteridgeville they've been saying. Those people in Atteridgeville who've been saying the queues are long, they are sharing it with Africans, migrants who then pay to get into the long queues and stuff. They are afraid of that. Look, I want you to understand, I'm not saying this is what is going to happen. I don't know what is going to happen. The NHI is just a big bomb. Boo. We all don't know. But what I know, what these social media people are saying is they are crying because they are going to have to finally share the resources of the country with those people that they thought they were above. It's a case of chicken coming home to roost. These guys now will have to come and share these resources with the rest of us. And they are not happy. But they wanted you to be happy in Kalafong, to share these long queues with everyone. Now, you are going to go to Morningside Mediclinic and go and share resources with everyone, if it's true. And now they are not happy. But anyway, let's see how NHI unfolds. I hope I'm wrong. I hope they are wrong. I hope, but that's one thing we cannot hope is whatever this NHI is, the state of our medical facilities is not ready for blanket occupation. But that not being ready does not mean everyone must not utilize it. The rich have been earmarking certain hospitals for themselves and not wanting to use it to share it equally with other members of society. Now, it's going to be blanket rule. Like I said, I'm not sure. Let's hope it's true. The reason I hope it's true is someone told me that imagine white people who, during apartheid, they did not have to queue. They did not have to be subjected to water cuts. They did not have they did not have to share anything. Now you are bringing a new dispensation. You are saying they have to queue. They are now going to suffer the same things. Electricity was afforded for them only. That's why they could find it every now and then. Now, because electricity goes to everyone, there are cuts. That's the honest truth. Now, they will not get those privileges because that thing they used to have for them is now for everyone. And this is why they are losing their minds. But anyway, this is what they say. I'm not sure. You tell me. NHI is going to get people killed. Thank you.
So the NHI bill is being signed into law tomorrow by the president. This is the final step in the lawmaking process. And once the president signs it in, this law will be official. This new legislation is very extensive and quite complicated. It involves a lot of different kind of moving parts. So it's not necessarily going to be implemented straight away from tomorrow, but it will be the law from tomorrow. So if we're getting a new law, let's talk a little bit about what exactly this NHI bill is. I am considering doing a longer video with a more in-depth and detailed explanation on this in the future. So leave me comments if you do have any further questions, but this is going to be a brief summary. Essentially, this NHI bill is a response to the fact that healthcare and access to healthcare in South Africa is very, very unequal. It is also based on the constitutional provision that everyone should have access to healthcare in this country. So that's the problem. The NHI bill is an attempted solution to this problem. And how the NHI bill attempts to solve this problem is by moving away from a multi-payer system of healthcare and towards a single-payer system of healthcare. And essentially, the NHI will be like a universal medical aid for all people in South Africa. So instead of you needing to pay a doctor when you need healthcare, when you need medical services, you will instead be a member of this NHI fund, and the fund will pay the hospitals directly. They will enter, or the doctors directly. They will enter into arrangements and agreements for the rates that they will pay to doctors and hospitals and healthcare providers, and you will not have to make the payment as an individual. The fund, the NHI fund, will make that payment. Now, the first question that many people ask when they hear this is, well, where is the money for this going to come from? And that is a valid question, but the NHI bill does try to shed some light on this and say where they're going to get the funds for this. So firstly, they mention kind of like redistribution of current funding and current government income to be able to fund this NHI fund, but they also do mention that there will be a personal income tax contribution as well as an employer tax contribution to fund this scheme. The second question that a lot of people have when they hear about this is, well, what about my private medical aid? Why do I have to contribute to something if I've got a private medical aid? And the answer to that is that the NHI is aiming to almost completely replace private medical aids. Once implemented, medical aid schemes will no longer be able to offer coverage for services, healthcare services, that are covered by the NHI. Now, you can still choose to be a member of a medical aid, private medical aid scheme, but as the implementation of the bill expands, medical aids will be allowed to cover less and less, and eventually the NHI aims to get to the point where medical aids are only providing like top-up coverage that is for things like maybe cosmetic procedures or like more superfluous things that the NHI is not intending to cover themselves. Now, again, this won't happen immediately. The implementation process will happen gradually, and there's a lot of steps in the process that do need to be figured out. The NHI is going to have to go through a contracting process in which it makes agreements with all of the various hospitals and healthcare service providers and establishes the prices that they're going to be able to pay for various things. So it's going to take a while for this to be fully implemented. For now, you'll be able to stay on your medical aid as is, but again, eventually the goal is to completely replace that, or almost completely. The reason behind this is that in theory it should make expenditure on healthcare in South Africa as like a whole less, while providing more service to more people, ensuring more equitable access to healthcare, and ensuring that there is not a discrepancy in the quality of treatment people are able to receive based on differences in their income or their wealth. So that's the NHI bill, very briefly summarized. I know a lot of people have a lot of thoughts on this, so I'd love to hear your opinions on the NHI bill and whether you think it's a good idea or a bad idea in the comments. I do also know that a lot of people might agree that the bill is a good idea in theory, but be worried about how exactly it's going to be implemented under the current administration and current government. So let me know if you have any of those sorts of concerns as well. I'd love to hear people's different opinions.
So what is the ANC's NHI plan, and why does no one think it will work? It is an amazing, beautiful, crucial idea in theory. What it says is we're going to create a fund and fill it up with money, and that fund will be used to pay for all of South Africans' healthcare needs, including treatment, but also preventative care and general contributions to good health. And that fund is going to be available to cover the cost of any and all South Africans, whether they can afford to contribute to the fund or not. So hypothetically, this massive fund will be used to pay the bills of any and all South Africans who need any and all kind of healthcare. How much is this going to cost? No one's really sure, but at the very least, hundreds and hundreds of billions of rands a year will need to be in this fund to meet the demand. And where's that money going to come from? The government budget, which is taxpayer money. And what does this mean for private healthcare and medical aid? Well, the NHI bill says that once fully implemented, private healthcare and medical aid will not be allowed to cover or service any form of healthcare that the NHI covers. And the NHI intends to cover basically all healthcare, which means that every single South African would be expected to go to a government institution just like every other South African to receive medical treatment. Now, in an ideal world, this sounds great. If public healthcare can provide as good a quality of service to all South Africans as private healthcare could, you wouldn't need medical aid. You wouldn't need to pay to go to a private facility. You just go to a public one like everybody else, receive outstanding service, and it would all be covered by national health insurance. But this isn't an ideal world, and as much as the ANC government over the last 3 decades has definitely done some good, in recent ANC governments it's been a shambles. I think we as South Africans become desensitized to certain kinds of stories because there are so many of them, but I can't become desensitized to our healthcare crisis. Here's just a quick, easy Google of South African public healthcare news. Senior nurse shot dead in her car outside of Baragwanath Hospital. Vacancy rate at Baragwanath Hospital higher than internationally acceptable standards. Doctors SOS of critical food shortages at Chris Hani Baragwanath Hospital. How about a different hospital? Charlotte Maxeke owes 276 million rand. Over 2,000 operations have been cancelled at Charlotte Maxeke Hospital. Let's do another one. Northwest Hospital blasted for putting newborn babies in cardboard boxes because they didn't have any or enough incubators. Our public health service has been shambocked, not by lack of funding or lack of skill from the doctors and nurses, but from the ANC government's fundamental lack of care or interest in any of the patients or the facilities or the healthcare professionals who are supposed to service them, and by rampant, horrifying corruption. South African doctors and nurses are hailed the world over for their excellence, but for such a sad reason. They are so good at doing so much because they've been forced into impossible scenarios where they don't have the medical equipment or medical resources to do their jobs in the easy ways that are available in other parts of the world. But South African medical professionals are leaving because there aren't enough jobs to go around, and the jobs in particularly public healthcare are so awful. They are so burnt out and overworked, and whenever they try to speak up about awful conditions, they are slammed and taken out as evil whistleblowers by the Department of Health. And so many of them are leaving the country because the skill set that they have and the studies that they did condemns them to a really awful, depressing, debilitating life. And now the ANC government wants you to vote for them because they're going to create a national health insurance fund that's going to provide the money for all South Africans to get healthcare, but they have nearly destroyed the public.
As a future doctor and as an informed citizen of this country in general, I do not agree at all with the NHI bill that has just been passed. Firstly, I do not understand how we're headed towards elections, yet the current ruling party is still able to enforce such revolutionary changes to our legislature that will quite literally dictate the future of our healthcare. Healthcare is so crucial in how a country functions because sick people can't work. Nationalizing healthcare has been implemented in many first world countries and has failed miserably. How is it going to work in South Africa, a third world country? Yes, we have to recognize the fact that our healthcare is very unequal and it's collapsing. But something as reckless and risky as nationalizing healthcare is not the magic wand fix that the government is trying to cosplay it as to be. In fact, it's only going to make matters worse because who's going to fund it? Government is claiming that taxpayers are going to contribute towards the funding. They say approximately 1,500 per month is going to have to be paid. And that's ridiculous considering how heavily burdened taxpayers are already. It might be an arbitrary example, but what if I earn 2,000 Rand a month? So you're telling me I'm going to be left with 500 from the NHI deduction? Not only that, things like medical aid and private healthcare are going to be redundant. Everyone is going to have to fully depend on the state for healthcare. This is including immigrants. Healthcare is going to be free for everyone. But with the corruption and the historical evidence of how unreliable our government is when it comes to providing for its people, especially when they say we're going to allocate funds towards this cause, we're really in for a disaster. Healthcare professionals are going to flee the country because it also means employment for them is not going to be as beneficial or lucrative. And as we know, one of the biggest problems in hospitals is that the patient to doctor or health professional ratio is so unbalanced. There are so many patients, yet inadequate numbers of doctors or health professionals available to attend to them. We all know the story that in public hospitals, people are waiting in long lines or even dying in these lines. How is this going to change if now everyone is going to depend on the government, quote unquote, on public hospitals? If you can't provide for the subset of people who are accessing public health care and you can't guarantee them quality health care as you've promised to do so under the Constitution, how do you plan on providing for all the citizens And that also includes immigrants, any person who's coming into the country. That's what nationalization means. It's honestly a beautiful concept on paper because it's a plausible attempt to mitigate the inequalities that are existing in healthcare, accessing it, quality. It should be that whatever socioeconomic background you come from, you should be able to access quality healthcare. However, South Africa is known even globally for having the most progressive legislature, most progressive laws on paper, but none of them can ever be enforced. You don't have evidence for any of the things that are said on paper because the reality that most South Africans are living are so far from what is being promised on paper in legislature. The NHI bill is only going to reinforce that. But in my opinion, this government has gambled enough with our lives that pushing it as far as healthcare just shows how much they do not have the people in mind. It's probably a political ploy to garner votes, but hey,